Did you know Christmas was cancelled in Scotland for 400 years? But why? Allow me to explain via the medium of the mince pie. And this being Scotland Unplugged, we have to give it kind of a Scottish twist. So, shortbread mince pies. Some of you will remember that I made shortbread a couple of years ago and I used my great-grandmother's recipe. And I did say at the time that I'd better get it right or she might come back and haunt me. This time the jeopardy's a little bit more real. While the shortbread is my great-grandmother's recipe, the mince pie is actually my mum's recipe. So if I get it wrong, there will be consequences. So first of all, we need some caster sugar. In America, I believe this is known as superfine sugar or baking sugar. We need 125 grams of this, and we need 250 grams of butter. Chuck that in there, and then you've got to cream the caster sugar and the butter together. Every year in Scotland, you see newspaper stories about Christmas being banned here for 400 years, but that's not quite true. Christmas first emerged here around the 9th century, as in most of Northern Europe. That might have had something to do with Håkon the Good, King of Norway, who, according to his very own saga, having been fostered in England, returned to Norway and merged the pagan festival of Yule with Christmas. That's what you should wind up with. He moved Yule from midwinter, around the 21st of December, to coincide with Christmas on the 25th. He even put it into law. Then you want to add 250 grams of plain flour. My wife says just a little bit at a time, and I'm going to go with that. Then you want to add 125 grams of cornflour. So yeah, let's just mix that in there. You've got to be very, very careful not to overwork this, because people get really angry in the comments. Bad stuff will happen. Yule became Yuletide and then Christmastide, and the pagan traditions of feasting and celebrations stuck. Like a lot of Europe, Scotland was Catholic, and Christmas or Christmas lasted over a period of days and ended in the new year. Sometimes it's just best to get in there with your hands. Combine it all. We have a record of Cardinal Beaton, the Bishop of St Andrews, passing over the Christmas days with games and feasting in 1545. That was only a few months before he was killed and draped across the walls of St Andrews Castle as a revenge for the Protestant preacher George Wishart being burned at the stake outside the gates. And that's right around the time things started to change here. In the mid-15th century, during the Reformation, Scotland split from the Catholic Church. Cathedrals were damaged, icons were smashed, and anything seen as too superstitious or extravagant or idolatrous was frowned upon. And John Knox was frowner in chief. Christmas had been a time for feasting and celebration and frivolity, although it would have been less of a celebration than Easter. The new Presbyterian Kirk decided it needed to be stamped out. In those days, the church was all powerful. In 1573, the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland confirmed the abolishment of all days that hereto have been kept holy, except the Sabbath day, such as Yule Day, Saints' Days and such others. And they weren't messing about. In 1574, 14 women were admonished by the St Nicholas Aberdeen Kirk Session for playing, dancing and singing of filthy carols on Yule Day. Apparently they also had a problem with playing cards and dice, masked dancing with bells, selling Yule loaves, cross-dressing and extraordinary drinking. That's extraordinary drinking in Scotland. So yeah, you should wind up with something like that when it's all combined. Obviously don't overwork it too much. What I should have done was preheated my oven to 150 degrees C. That's for a fan-assisted oven, obviously. Add a liberal scattering of flour, and it's time to get the rolling pin out. On December the 26th, 1583, the Kirk Session of Glasgow Cathedral ordered 5 people who had kept Yule to publicly repent. Basically, they had to sit on a naughty seat, known as the Black Stool, and be admonished in front of the congregation. I have to keep reminding myself that I'm not actually making shortbread. Well, I am making shortbread. This is exactly how you would make normal shortbread, but this is going to be a little bit thinner because we're making shortbread mince pies. I can almost taste them already. Does anybody else get addicted to mince pies at this time of year? I wouldn't eat them at any other time of year. It's a bit like eating hot cross buns in December. It'd be a bit weird. So next you need a muffin tin. Apparently for making these kind of mince pies you want a bit of space and you want 2 different sizes of cutters. So, nice big cutter here and a small cutter for the lid. So that I don't run out of shortbread, I'm going to cut them at the same time. So hopefully I'll get 12 out of these. In 1583, the Kirk banned bakers from producing Yule bread and mincemeat pies. They also made them report anyone who'd requested them. But mince pies didn't look like they do now, and they weren't made the way they are now. You want to spoon enough of this in, so you actually want to be quite liberal with this according to the boss. You should want a tablespoonful of mincemeat. And this is one of the major differences between mince pies in the modern era and traditional mince pies. Traditional mince pies would have actually been, the mincemeat would have contained spices, but it would also have contained minced meat. Funnily enough. And that was part of the problem. The other part of the problem was that they were square and they would have had an effigy of the baby Jesus on the top of them. The mince pies representing the manger. And that made them false idols, albeit very tasty false idols. So you've got to be quite careful about your mixture here. As you can see, these 3 didn't make it. They're going to be shortbread instead. I never claimed to be a chef or a baker. Now it's time to pop your lids on. And you don't want any space between the mincemeat and the lids. At least that's what I've been told. And I always do as I'm told. Just steal a little bit from that one. So it's all a little bit of trial and error in case you haven't guessed. Once your oven's up to temperature, pop these in for 20 to 30 minutes. And then the hard part begins. We wait. That might all sound slightly ridiculous, but people were threatened with excommunication. There was some high up opposition though. James VI of Scotland also became James I of England and Ireland in 1603. He wanted Scotland and England to be one country. And to help him do that, he wanted one church, with him in charge of the whole shebang. So he reinstated Christmas in 1617. But the church in Scotland banned it again in 1638, and in 1640, the Scottish Parliament passed the first act discharging the Yule vacants, stating that the kirk within this kingdom was now purged of all superstitious observation of days. The act was partly repealed again in 1686 when James VII was on the throne, and so it went back and forth. This is Scotland though, and we do like to innovate. People couldn't put their energy into Christmas, not without consequences, so they decided to focus on something called Hogmanay. New Year was a secular celebration, nothing to do with the church. People could do as much feasting and drinking and celebrating as they liked, just as long as there was no dancing. Hogmanay got bigger and bigger here. We even invented the song people sing at midnight. But Santa wasn't done with us just yet. As the world got smaller and more connected, and cultures north and south of the border became more and more integrated over time, and as Christmas got bigger and more elaborate in the Victorian era, it became more of a thing here. Looking good. This is where you've got to be a little bit confident. Apparently, you just got to be brave and try and prise the mince pies out with a flat knife. Here goes, wish me luck. Ah! Yeah! I think maybe you should let them cool for a little while longer. Maybe that's the secret. Why am I doing this? Where's Caroline when I need her? Confidence. A little sprinkling of baker's sugar, aka caster sugar, to serve. If you want to be really fancy, you could put some holly on the top, something like that. I'm just grateful I managed to get that one out of the tin. In 1841, the first Yuletide card was displayed in a window just down the road from here in Leith. Christmas was made a bank holiday in 1871, but amazingly didn't become a public holiday here until 1958. For my grandparents, it was just another working day. A New Year was the bigger deal. These days, we still like to go for it on Hogmanay, and you could argue that we get the best of both worlds. A bit like this mince pie. It's not particularly Scottish until you make it out of shortbread, and double the fun. Whatever you're up to over the next couple of weeks, whatever and however you're celebrating or not celebrating, I hope you have a very happy holiday period, and that if you do make mince pies, you're a little bit more patient than I am watching them cool down. Very crumbly, but very good. Merry Christmas.